afternoon, Miss Stewart. Do you need a minute? I'm fine, ma'am. Thank you. Now, I would like to go back to, you said you moved on Josephine Street, 2011 Josephine? Yes, ma'am. You were 14 years at the time? I was about 14, 15 when we moved over. You were living there with your four brothers? Yes. Your mom was in an abandoned house around the corner? She was in and out. In and out of your house or the abandoned house? That was her house on Josephine. She was in and out of it. She was on drugs. You said she would be in an abandoned house around the corner? Yes, around the corner. Was that a crack house? No. It was just an abandoned house. Her and her boyfriend lived there. But she was on crack? Yes, she was. Do you believe Telly Hankton killed your brother? Right now, today? Yes, I do. As of today? I wouldn't have thought that he would have killed him. I would have thought he would have left that alone. But right now, today, yes. So prior to you believing that, you were friends with Telly? We all were, yes. So you talk about Josephine Street being a really kind of fun place. I think you used the term it was a fun place. Y'all had a lot of fun there? We just sold drugs, smoked. I don't know about fun. When you testified, you said it was a fun place. We hung out every day. We went to the club. We clubbed. It probably was fun at the club. So when you were doing, you named a lot of people. There were a lot of people selling drugs, correct? Yes. You say you personally were selling drugs that you got from Telly? I did. When you testified today, I believe you said that you got, I don't want to misquote you, you got a quarter from Telly 3 times a week. Is that correct? Yes. If I wanted a nice week, I would probably school like 3 times. Do you recall testifying before the grand jury back in March of 2012? Yes. Do you recall at that time you said that you were actually getting a quarter 3 times a day? Sometimes, if it was rolling like that, I probably would school. You were just going. You really didn't keep count of how you was going because it was selling so fast. So sometimes I probably school 1 time a day, probably another day, probably school 2 times. It was just different times. Go ahead. I'm sorry. It was just, it was dealing with how the set was going, how the money was flowing at that time, who was all outside. If they have a big crowd outside, I might have sold all my stuff that day and probably could get more. But most of the time, everybody was outside, so I probably could just re-up 3 times a week. Okay, so a lot of what you're talking about today in 2016, yes, it's based on your memory. It's not like you have records or anything like that. It's just my memory. So your memory, as you said today, it depends, right? Yes. It's mostly a good guess of what was going on. It ain't a good guess. It went on. No, I'm talking about the amounts. Oh, yes. It's a guess? Yes. When you say we talked about pluck, yes. Did you have a sexual relationship with him? No. How about Rodney Robinson? No. Who is Ty Thomas? Do you know who he is? Ty Thomas. Ty Thomas. Never heard of him. You never heard of him? You talked about your brother selling from, I think it's 2011 Josephine Street? My brother? Yes. Yes, all of us did. Specifically Arthur Stewart. Do you know that he was getting his drugs from Ty Thomas? I don't know Ty Thomas. Do you know if he was getting drugs from anyone other than Telly? No. You don't know that? Who he was going to get his from? He didn't go nowhere to score but on Josephine. He didn't know nobody that I didn't know. So, he didn't know anybody that you didn't know? Right. Are you aware that, Mr. Stewart, scratch that for a minute. Your house at 2011, that was a double, isn't it? It was. And so, what was the other address? 2011, 2009. 2009. Both of us were, as you said, the police came and kicked in the doors often. Not 2009, 2011. 2011? Yes. So, 2009, that's where your grandmother lived? She was staying there, but that's my aunt's house. My aunts and my cousins, yeah. But 2011 was where the police would focus? Yes. You said that they kicked in the door often? Yes, they did. And any of those times was Telly Hankton there? He was never there. He was never there. You also talked about, I think, let me make sure. I don't want to misquote you. Derek and Anthony Commodore was getting a half a key? Uh-huh. You said today that they were doing that 2 or 3 times a week? Probably so. Probably more than that sometimes. Do you recall that same grand jury testimony where you said they was getting it maybe once a week? Like I told you, it all depends on how it was going. Uh-huh. It all depends on how it was selling, how stuff was moving. And that's how people scored. If they got off it the next day or that night, they were scoring again the next day. Or if they got off it that day, they was going again that day. They just didn't rest without scoring. So, the amounts that you're giving are not necessarily accurate. They are just guesses. No, I think the half key. No, I'm not talking. You're talking about how many times? Yes. Probably, not really a guess, but probably not 3 times every day. Uh-huh. Probably not every day 3 times going a half a key. You can't get off a half a key. 3 half a keys in one day. At least I ain't never see it. You said your brother, I believe, was killed in 2002? He was. How was he killed? I don't know. You don't know? He was shot, but we don't know. Is it fair to say that, unfortunately, Josephine Street people were killed or shot pretty regularly? No, that's not a fair statement. That's not true. We just talked about your brother being killed, and he wasn't killed on Josephine. Let's talk about the people that you talked about. You said that Pluck was shot? He was shot, yeah. He wasn't killed, he was shot. Let me ask the question. Was it pretty common that people were shot on Josephine Street? No, not when I was around there. No? No. So, the people you witnessed being shot or heard of being shot, that wasn't common? Not to happen on Josephine. We didn't have no killings and shootings around there. You were shown, I think it was Exhibit 48, a picture of house? Yes. You said that Telly purchased that house for her? That's what I believe. That's what he said when he bought it. You believe that? That's what he said when he had my brothers and their friends gutting it out. He said he bought this house for his mom. Are you aware that she worked at Charity Hospital for 30 years? I believe she worked, yes. I don't know where she worked at. You didn't know she worked at Charity Hospital? I didn't know. You referred to Trell. I believe his name is Kentrell Smith. Yes. That's your boyfriend? My children's father. You are not together? We're not at all. Is he in jail now? No, he is not. What about Inez? Yes, that's Anthony Commodore. Is he a friend of yours? Yes, that's my cousin's ex-husband. Is he in jail? I believe so. I haven't talked to him in like 5 years. I don't know where he is. What about Rodney Robertson? Is that a friend? No. He is not a friend. Not at all. So the information that you were testifying earlier that you got from him, is that Dudu? Dudu, yes. Rodney Robertson is Dudu. But he wasn't a friend. He was a friend at the time, but no longer. He is not a friend. Everybody was friends on Josephine, but with everything that transpired, nobody ain't friends no more. So when everybody left Josephine, y'all kind of lost touch? No. When everybody went to getting shot around there, everybody lost touch.